You know the guy in the squadron bar who's been wrong about every prediction for 15 years, but still starts sentences with, "Look, based on my experience." Yeah, this episode is about him, and if we're honest, about us. Welcome back to the Folker Lab podcast, where we talk intelligence, strategy, leadership, and discernment, and occasionally try to save organizations from weaponizing bad hot takes at scale. Today, we're going to poke at something near and dear to my heart, critical thinking as a combat capability, not just a buzzword you put on OPRs when you run out of adjectives. This episode is built around a paper I co-authored with my friend Jim Slap Davitch called Operationalizing Air Force Critical Thinking, which is a very air and space power journal way of saying, what if we stopped pretending we know who are the good thinkers and measured it? Let's start with the requirement, because this isn't just a retired airman yelling at clouds. The Air Force Future Operating Concept literally says we need to recruit and assess individuals with demonstrated potential for critical thinking if we want to win in contested environments. Demonstrated potential. That's a fancy way of saying, show your work. Senior leaders have been saying we need better critical thinkers for years. The problem is that as a service, we've mostly treated critical thinking like an academic elective instead of like jets, missiles, or fuel, a core combat capability you resource, monitor, and test. And when the Air Force doesn't know how to resource something, it does what any self-respecting bureaucracy does. It sends everyone to a class. So we've had courses like the Critical Thinking and Structured Analysis course at Goodfellow. Great course, good people, helpful tools. But then what? We count number of graduates and gently pat ourselves on the back for investing in critical thinking, as if we can brief a bar chart to China and they'll surrender. But there's no sustained way to measure whether anyone is thinking better over time. No check ride equivalent for your brain. In the paper, Slap and I argue that's the real gap. You don't measure flying qualification by counting people who went to pilot training once. You do periodic check rides. You watch them fly. You make them land in crosswinds while you silently judge. Critical thinking should work the same way. Cognitive check rides. Regular chances to put your reasoning on the line, get feedback, and improve. But instead of that, what do? We go all in on what we call the illusion of expert judgment. You know this move. Someone says, we've got a tough call here. High uncertainty, lots of risk. Better ask the most experienced person in the room. And look, experience is great. Please do not send the lieutenant straight from ROTC to negotiate nuclear arms control. But experience alone does not automatically equal good judgment. The problem is we almost never record the track record. Unless a decision ends up in a policy memo, we don't have a running scoreboard for who's been right about big, uncertain calls over time. So we substitute visible signals. Time in service, the patch on the chest, the fact that someone once briefed a 3-star without crying, for real evidence of critical thinking skill. Meanwhile, decades of research says human judgment, even expert judgment, is riddled with overconfidence, cognitive biases, and all kinds of psychological gremlins. But we treat, I have a strong opinion and a story, as if it's the same thing as, I have a demonstrated record of making calibrated forecasts that held up to reality. So in the paper, we basically ask, what if we stop taking our own hype at face value? Enter some inconvenient results. Colonel Adam Mez Stone was one of the first people in the Air Force to say, okay, everybody calm down, let's test this. He used the Watson-Glasser critical thinking appraisal, which is a standardized test that measures skills like inference, recognizing assumptions, deduction, interpretation, and evaluating arguments. He gave it to 180 junior officers and compared them to a grad school norm group. You know how pilots like to say they're all the best? Yeah, not here. This group scored well below average. Later at Air War College, Mez reran the experiment with Air Command and Staff College, Air War College, and SAS students. SAS did okay, around the 61st percentile. ACSC and AWC, 36th percentile. Below average compared to other master's programs. If you could hear the sound of a service's self-image shrieking, that would be the moment. His conclusion was pretty blunt. The Air Force talks a big game about critical thinking, but is not consistently educating and training people to do it at the level we need. And even after those studies, we still don't have sustained long-term measurement of critical thinking across the force. So Slap and I asked, how do you fix this without buying a critical thinking weapon system for $9.3 billion and then canceling it in FY28? Our answer, forecasting. Now stay with me. Forecasting is one of the most fertile, painful, and useful places for critical thinking because it has three magical properties. You have to be explicit. You get clear feedback. And you can track performance over time. You make a prediction about a real-world event in probabilistic terms. There's a 60% chance country X tests a nuclear weapon by the end of the year, and then you wait to see what happens. We were heavily influenced by the Good Judgment Project. This IARPA-funded geopolitical forecasting tournament where thousands of people around the world made predictions about events, and researchers tracked how accurate they were over several years. Out of that came the concept of super forecasters, ordinary humans, not necessarily government insiders, who consistently outperform peers and even some intelligence benchmarks by being disciplined, open-minded, and good at updating their beliefs. So we said, why aren't we doing something like that in the Air Force? We didn't just write about it, we tried it. While in command at the 7th Intelligence Squadron, we conducted our own 6-month forecasting tournament. We wanted to see, in a real unit, what it looked like to put this into practice. We even brought in some smart PhDs to administer the Watson-Glasser assessment to the competitors, because we were hunting for the Holy Grail, a correlation between their Brier scores and their Watson-Glasser scores, between forecasting skill and critical thinking skill. And this is the part where, if this were a Hollywood movie, I would tell you we found a beautiful, clean relationship and the music swells and everyone hugs. That is not what happened. We did not find a meaningful correlation. The people who were the best forecasters did not neatly line up as the people with the highest Watson-Glasser critical thinking scores. The data basically looked at us and said, nice try. Afterward, I had a conversation with one of the executives at the Good Judgment Project. And when I told him what we'd seen, he just nodded and said, yeah, we've done similar studies. We didn't find a strong correlation either. So forecasting is clearly measuring something valuable, but it's not a simple one-to-one proxy for the way those critical thinking tests are structured. That was humbling. Now here's the important thing. That didn't make the tournament a failure. Far from it. A forecasting tournament and similar efforts, like what you see in markets such as Polymarket, is still one of the best ways we know how to help people develop their forecasting skills and identify the super forecasters in the crowd. Continuous practice and candid feedback make improvement possible. You can watch your own calibration improve. You can see who is consistently updating well, who is learning from misses, and who is quietly beating the crowd. That is incredibly useful for any organization that lives in uncertainty. But the lack of correlation left us with a gap. We still don't have a satisfying way to operationalize critical thinking measurement the same way. Forecasting was helping us sharpen one blade, but we needed a dedicated way to sharpen the thinking blade too. That question, how do we do for critical thinking what tournaments do for forecasting, is what eventually pushed me to build something new. Because here's the thing. I don't think the answer is give everyone another multiple choice test every few years and hope. I think the answer looks more like reps and sets for your brain. Daily practice, structured challenges, honest feedback, tracking your progress over time so you can see whether all this effort is changing how you think. That's why I developed MindMaster. MindMaster is an AI-powered critical thinking coaching app designed to give you exactly that. A way to improve your critical thinking skills in just a few minutes a day, to measure your progress over time, and to get candid, objective feedback instead of polite nods from your peers. Think of it as a cognitive PT program in your pocket. Instead of running laps, you're running your mind through structured scenarios, prompts, and debriefs that push you to analyze, question assumptions, consider alternatives, and tighten up your reasoning. And the point is not that you should take my word for any of this. If this whole episode has a theme, it's please stop believing confident claims without evidence. So don't believe mine. Test it. If you want to see whether daily structured work on your thinking changes anything for you, take the 7-day Mind Master Challenge. Go to studio.com/Volker, run through the coaching for a week, and see if you notice a difference in how you frame problems, how you argue, how you forecast, how you lead. If you don't, you've lost a few minutes a day. If you do, you found a repeatable way to train a skill we keep calling critical without giving it a training plan. Okay, promo over. Back to our regularly scheduled nerding out. Let's take a quick Brier score detour, because this is still one of my favorite ways to get people to stop talking to me in any social situation. A Brier score is just a way to measure how wrong your probability forecast was. Lower is better, like golf, but for humility. Say the question is, will country X conduct a nuclear test by the end of 2027? You forecast 60% yes and 40% no. If they do test, your Brier score for that forecast is 0.16. If they don't, it's 0.36. The math is the mean squared over the outcomes. You don't have to remember the formula, just remember this. If you keep calling everything 80%, your Brier score will eventually expose you. Now imagine Brier scores becoming part of the culture. You're in a meeting. Someone says, "This new system will absolutely be fielded on time." Instead of just nodding or arguing, you quietly ask, "Cool, what's your Brier score?" That's the core idea of operationalizing critical thinking, moving it from vibes to verifiable. But forecasting alone isn't magic. The IARPA tournaments found that a modest amount of training, like 45 minutes worth, on cognitive errors and good forecasting practices significantly improved people's accuracy. Things like understanding base rates, recognizing overconfidence, challenging your first hypothesis, and updating your forecast as new information comes in. This is where Tetlock, Kahneman, and Tversky all show up with their stack of research, reminding us that our brains are lovable but deeply hackable. So the program we propose in the paper has 3 pieces: a little training to help people see their own blind spots, regular, probabilistic forecasts on real questions, and consistent scoring over time using Brier scores. Once you have that, a lot of interesting possibilities open up. You can identify people who improve with practice, those super forecaster type airmen who might not have flashy resumes, but have a track record of calibrated, bias-aware judgment. You can test correlations between good Brier scores and other measures, like we tried with the Watson-Glasser. And you can accept the answer even when the answer is, these may be related but are different muscles. And you can do all this while being honest that forecasting skill is not the whole story. It's a powerful piece. It's not the entire puzzle of what we mean by critical thinking. In the summary of the paper, we argue that we have to start treating critical thinking like flying qualification. Train it, monitor it, validate it, and refuse to put people in certain decision seats until they've demonstrated skill, not just enthusiasm. That doesn't mean killing intuition. Expert intuition is still valuable. It means surrounding intuition with a culture and a system that catch its predictable errors. And this isn't just about the Air Force. You can do this at the micro level in your own life. You don't need IARPA to ask yourself, okay, what's my forecast? Make a habit of turning your vague expectations into actual numbers. There's a 70% chance this project slips by a month. There's a 40% chance this new habit will stick. Then write it down. Check back later. Give yourself a mini Brier score. You'll be amazed how quickly your brain learns. Oh, I am wildly overconfident about everything, and perhaps I should calm down. President Kennedy has that line we quote in the article. Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. Forecasting with feedback is basically a discomfort machine. Tools like MindMaster aim to be the same thing for your day-to-day reasoning. A little structured discomfort now, so you don't have to experience catastrophic discomfort later. So here's where I want to leave you. If you're in a position of leadership, don't just say we value critical thinking and then reward people for confident speeches and colorful slides. Start asking for quantifiable, time-bound forecasts. Ask, how sure are you numerically and by when? Ask, What would change your mind? Ask. What does your track record look like on this kind of call? If you're still early in your career, don't wait for the institution to build a whole tournament. You can start your own cognitive PT, personal prediction practice with a notebook, a spreadsheet, or an app like MindMaster. Make your brain do reps, track your own Brier score, compete against your past self. Critical thinking is not about sounding smart in seminars. It's about making better bets under uncertainty, learning from the ones you lose, and never being so attached to your own opinion that you can't let reality change it. This is the Fulker Lab Podcast. Go out this week and try one thing before you fire off your next confident prediction about the mission, the market, your career, even your family's weekend plans. Pause and ask, okay, what's my real percentage on this? Write it down. Check back later. And if you want to double down on training your mind, take the 7-day challenge at studio.com/Fulker and see what happens to the way you think. Now, I'm curious, if we set up a cognitive turkey shoot for your unit, would you be the first in line or join those hiding behind the coffee machine?